Welcome back, everyone. So today we will be speaking to the fabulous Emma Brownson. Now, Emma is our branding specialist and graphic designer for soul-stirring branding. Had to get that one right. So thank you so much for joining us, Emma.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I'm really excited. And as you know, this is my first time doing anything like this. So really excited to be part of it. And thanks so much for having me on.
Excellent. No worries at all. We're very excited to have you here because especially in the startup phases of your business, branding is a huge thing. And I have spoke to you before, and I've mentioned before to you, your passion about this really got me, and it's why I really wanted to chat to you, because I feel like you will be able to help explain branding and its importance to us a little bit more so that we feel a bit more confident with it.
Awesome. Yeah, can't wait.
Excellent. So my first question would be to you, when we are talking about branding, what does that exactly mean to you?
Okay. So yeah, I think this is a great question. And for me, I've been working in the industry for so long that I kind of forget what it's like to be brand new to it and to think, what is even branding? And I started to think about it a lot last night, and I was like, you know what, it is actually a really confusing concept. Like, I think that there are other aspects to starting a business, like maybe like to do with marketing, that are kind of easier to grasp. But the reason why branding is so confusing, I think, is because there's so many intangible concepts to it. Like, it's not all really black and white and really obvious. So I was having a think last night, like, how is the best way that I could describe to your lovely people in your mastermind who are really new to business about the concept of branding in a way that's really easy to understand. So, hopefully you can bear with me on this. I thought you need to have your long distance glasses on. You need to think about eating a piece of chocolate cake, and you need to step into somebody else's shoes. So that probably sounds like super bizarre, but this will hopefully all make sense soon. So with the long distance glasses, and I hope that's the correct term, I don't wear glasses, but if you're short-sighted, you need your long distance glasses to see the big picture, to see further on. And I think that we all get hung up on those tangible elements of our brand, like I was talking about. So we know we need a logo. We know we need our sort of core colors. We know we need a website and business cards. And it's like, these are all sort of really tangible things that you can kind of reach out and touch, and you can see them and you understand what they are. But what I've realized is that's just really a short-sighted view on it. So it's kind of like just the surface level stuff. And the problem is, when you only get to that surface level, you don't get to see the big picture. So you can imagine it's like you're sort of driving down this road, right? But you're short-sighted, but you haven't brought your long-distance glasses along, and you're sort of driving along this road and you're trying to get to this new destination, but you can't see the signposts ahead, so you take the wrong turn, and basically you haven't taken the sort of shortest route to wind up, and you're going around in circles and you're going the wrong way. So I think that kind of relates to branding as well. It's like, you don't just want to look at it on the surface level. You want to see the big picture. So you kind of need to zoom out, or alternatively kind of like dig deep. So, one of those two things, kind of both, to see that there is sort of more to branding than kind of meets the eye, or, those tangible aspects. So you're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but what is the big picture then? So this is going to be a bit of a long spiel. I just thought of it. So then I thought of the chocolate cake thing as like this really great example. So like with a chocolate cake, if you think about it on like a logical level, it's like, okay, you take cocoa and you take milk and butter and whatever else goes into making a cake, because I'm so not a baker or cook at all. But anyway, obviously there's different ingredients that go into it. You pop it into the oven and out pops the cake. So you might think, okay, that's that's the end of the chocolate cake. But I started to think about it, especially for women, like we have, it's kind of a deeper thing for us to eat a chocolate cake. Like there's all these sort of emotions that get stirred up. So you can imagine if you're like making the cake for somebody, or maybe someone's making it for you. So like you might have the sense of anticipation and excitement when you can sort of see it in the oven, and like you can smell it, and it smells delicious, and you're like really excited to eat it. And then you take it out of the oven, and then you eat it, and it might be really delicious and make you feel really happy and joyful. Or you might be receiving the cake from somebody, so you feel like a sense of love and really appreciation for the person who's making it. And maybe it's for your birthday, so there's a sense of celebration to it and kind of marking the occasion, and maybe like some nostalgia, because it's like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and I had the cake, and now I'm a bit too old for cake, but I'm glad my husband brought me the cake anyway, kind of thing. So basically it's about the whole experience of having the cake when you think about it on a deeper level. So it's not just like, cocoa plus milk plus butter equals to cake, and here it is, here's the cake. It's that whole deeper experience which really makes it meaningful. And I thought that was a great analogy for branding as well, because it's not like you just go, okay, like here's my logo plus my colors plus my fonts plus graphics, photography, all that. Put it in the oven, 1 month later out pops the website. Like that's the surface level of your brand. But you really want to think about the whole experience that the person is going through, and what kind of emotions are you stirring up, and how does the person feel. And I think that's the power of branding. So a lot of people don't get that opportunity to harness the power of branding because they think it's just the visual elements. And of course that's important, and that's a lot of the work that I do. But, I think it's really important to get to the foundations first before you even think about, what are the ingredients of my cake, and, what's it going to look like out on the other end. And the important thing to think about is like, we have the power to shape the way people see our brand, or, so, you don't just want to put the logo out there into the world. Just grab any old logo, choose any colors that you like, and just put it out there without thinking about it strategically. So that's like where brand strategy comes in. You don't just want to put anything out into the world and let your audience read into it any way they would like, and experience it any way they would like, and feel whatever they want to feel. Like, obviously everybody's going to read into it slightly differently depending on what their past experiences are, or, just how they see the world. But still, we have this opportunity to shape the way people see our business on a deeper level. So yeah, that's where branding comes in. And that's such a crucial part of it. You want to take control over what kind of emotions come through, what kind of experience you create. And then the last part of that was to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because I think it's so important to remember that, branding isn't about how you see your business, but it's about how your audience or your ideal customer is experiencing you. So, you can know your message inside and out. You can know who you are, what you stand for, what your personality is, all these things. But the question is, does that translate to your audience? Because that's effective branding. If it doesn't translate, if you know who you are but it doesn't translate, then it's not really doing its job.
Exactly.
So in summary to that, I guess you need to look at the big picture and remember it's not just about the visual elements, but it's about the full experience, and you need to put yourself in your customer's shoes.
Yeah, excellent. I love that. Now I want to so you sort of covered a little bit of it in that first question, but obviously a lot of the people, or the people who will be listening to this, our beautiful entrepreneurs, they will be in that sort of very first startup stage. Mm-hmm. So I want to know why it's important to have this at least figured out in that startup stage. I mean, I know personally for myself, twice I didn't have it worked out, and I built websites, I had done all those things, And then really late in the piece is when I decided to look at that stuff, and then I had to change everything that I had done already. So I know for me it's important because it's something you should nail down. But from your perspective, you know, why is it really, really crucial in that startup?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really familiar story, what you're saying in terms of, you know, doing everything else first, then later thinking about your branding. And, you know, kind of like what I talked about earlier, I think it all comes back to people don't really get it. They don't understand why it's important. You know, you're thinking, I've just started this business, cash flow's tight, you know, I'm going to work on what my offer is, what my product is, what my service is. And, you know, obviously I need to think about how am I going to market myself? How am I going to get myself out there? But the thing is, if you're not clear on your message, then you're basically wasting all these marketing dollars on something that, you know, isn't true to who you are authentically and isn't going to translate to your audience and to be meaningful. So I really do feel like, you know, getting clear on your branding, getting clear on your message is basically the fundamental first stage of starting your business. And like we said, not many people approach it like that, but it is so, so crucial. And you're probably thinking, okay, I'm starting this business and, you know, I'm new to the industry. And then you get this sort of comparisonitis thing where you're looking around and you're like, oh, you know, there's like 50 people offering the same thing as I'm offering. And, you know, they've been in business for years and they have an established client base and, you know, they have a great reputation and a flashy website. And you're probably thinking, well, how can I compete with these people? Because, you know, I'm brand new to it. Nobody knows me. I don't have anything established. And a great way that you can do that is through branding. But yeah, not many people get it, which is frustrating. But there's so much that you could do to differentiate yourself through branding. That's a core element of it. You know, you need to know how are you different from the competition. You need to be able to express that. And a really powerful thing is being able to connect with other people's values, other people's purpose, what they believe in. So one thing I really recommend is watching Simon Sinek's video, which is Start With Why. It was a TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, please watch it because it's kind of the cornerstone to all that I sort of believe in about being authentic in your branding and starting with what you really truly believe in, what's your purpose, what's your mission, and starting with that, not starting with, oh, you know, I'm a graphic designer. You know, it's like, that's great, but everybody does that. The way that we can really differentiate is in our unique message, speaks to our heart and soul. And that's really a big part of what I do. You know, my business name is Soul Stirring Branding. So that was sort of core to it all, this idea of a soulful approach to branding and really digging deep to the heart and soul. And I think in the past, everybody kind of, you know, neglected that idea and they were just pushing whatever their offering was. And now you can see there's a big trend towards people being more authentic in their branding and developing a personal brand and all this kind of stuff. And it's because it works and it's so, so important. So yes.
It gives a professional element as well, I think, to see that there's sort of a uniformity about the brand and the message. And so I talk to the girls all the time about their message and their elevator speech and their why. And
I love your videos on your Facebook group, you know, and I think that that's fantastic to participate. This is going off on a tangent, but to participate in that, because I did one of your video challenges, and that's how we got to know each other. You know, so it's like you put yourself out there and you just be yourself and then opportunities come. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. So there's the two elements, you know, you get out there and you say your bit and you can, as you said, put your promos and things out. But when people do start to stalk you, because they start stalking you on Facebook, what you're about and where you work. But when they start looking at stuff, it is very much it has to be appealing to them. And they have to see that you've got this beautiful brand or this beautiful thing that flows through. And actually, after our chat last time, there was something not right about my website, and it was haunting me. So after our chat, I actually went back through and I made sure it was all a little bit more uniform than it was. Right. Now I love it. So it is very,
Fantastic.
very, very important. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's sort of two sides to it, I guess. You have to make sure your message is right, and then from there develop the look and the feel. So that's another aspect to it. So what I do is I help people to understand their message in their heart and soul, and then I help them to translate that visually. So I guess what I do is I've been thinking about it. It's a little bit different to other people's approaches because, often you'll find that, clients will come to me and they'll be like, oh, I want these colors and I love the style on Pinterest. But for me, my approach is really intuitive and I don't really need all that really specific guidance. I like to listen to what is it that, is true to your heart and soul, what's authentic to you, what's your core message, and then I find the way to translate that visually after that. So basically, you don't want to just, like I was talking about at the beginning, you don't want to just put any logo, any colors, any sort of visual system together. It should actually relate back to who you are. So there needs to be an alignment there between who you are and the image that you're putting out there in the world. Otherwise, obviously, people will instantly think, oh, I had one idea about this woman or whoever it is online, then I spoke to her and she was something completely different. So you really want to make sure that it's in alignment there. Yeah. And I think that too many people just are obsessed with creating these Pinterest boards and they're like, I love this style and I love this style and this is on trend and that is on trend. But the real question is it in alignment with who you are? And if it's not, then you shouldn't use it for your branding. It's so, so important.
Exactly. And also who your client is.
Absolutely.
There's no use having a blinged out website if you're dealing with people who maybe don't really go with that, if that doesn't sit well with them. So there is so many more elements to it, which actually brings me to the next question, which is, I know from our chat, you've told me sort of the process that you go through with your clients. And just for the girls, I'd really love for you just to explain that for us, and because you are very in depth with it, and I think that's the great thing about what you do. And especially for those people who are in that stage of their business where they're looking for, I think, as you mentioned previously, like rebranding or even just getting started. I think the process that you do is so important. So can you sort of tell us so if someone was to, come to you, what's the process? What are those questions that you ask them to help sort of spark that new branding?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really long process. And like you were saying, I am really different in my approach, I think. So, it all kind of starts with discovering who you are authentically in your heart and soul. Okay, so that's something that I've sort of developed over time. How it started is, I'm a graphic designer by trade and I just fell in love with doing branding. I just love how I get to be so creative with it and I get to work over a longer period of time. Like I'm not just churning something out, I get to think about it really deeply and then, put this concept out and, get feedback from the client. And I just find it really fulfilling. So I guess that's sort of what got me into branding in the first place. But, I do all sorts of different graphic design work. But so I started off, as a graphic designer. And I think that one of the core issues, this is going off on a slight tangent, but one of the core issues with just working with any graphic designer on your branding is that branding is like a very specific niche and you need to have that kind of knowledge about how to work in brand strategy. And not everybody has that. So when I was first starting out, I'd done my design degree, we'd done some branding work in that. I got some experience working with clients, but, I didn't know what I know today. I've learned so much experience. And the problem is if you're working with just someone who's like, oh yeah, I'll create a logo for you, and they don't ask you any questions about who you are and maybe just say, what do you want? Okay, I'll do it. Here we go. Here's 10 options. You're not really engaging on that deeper level like I was talking about. You're just going on the surface level and you're not really harnessing the power of branding. So kind of over the years, I've started to really develop my process for getting to the bottom of the brand strategy, simply because a client has never come to me and been like, oh, here's all my information about who I am, what I stand for, what my values are, this is my personality, and I understand, like, you're not in the industry, you don't know what you need to be coming to the graphic designer with. So it's our job to ask you those questions. But, some people don't even think to do it. And as a client, you don't know what you don't know. So you'll just go along with the process, and then maybe you're not really happy with the outcome. So basically, I think it's so important, to ask these questions so that I can create the best possible outcome in the design. So that's why I do it. I think it's just so crucial. And I think for me, the more information, the better. Like, the more the client can give me, the better, which I know other people say the opposite, and they don't like too much information. But for me, I'm sort of this information junkie. I love finding out everyone's backstory and all this information about them. So basically, you want to make sure you're ready for the branding process, which I know is something we spoke about. And what I would advise is, don't get started with making a huge investment in your branding if you don't really know what shape your business is going to take. So you kind of need to know what you want to offer and a vague idea on who you want to offer it to. Because of course, something everyone's probably heard is not everybody is your customer. And when you can be really targeted with it, you get results. So if you're thinking, I'm a health coach and I'm just going to work with everybody, then you probably need to dig a little bit deeper and to think about things on a deeper level, and you might need that time just to really think it out and to explore the industry and see what people are saying and that kind of thing. So make sure you've tested the waters and you kind of have a rough understanding of where you're going, because the big thing I find is that when you start off in business, you often pivot a lot. Like, you try things, you find out they don't work. It's all trial and error. And that was the same with my business, and I'm sure with yours as well, Teresa. And,
yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of pivoting.
That's great. But, you don't want to jump into something too early and think, okay, my audience is this particular group, and then you change your mind on it or something like that. So, don't be scared to, brand yourself early on, but just make sure that you're pretty clear on your message. And I think that, maybe if you've been working in the industry quite a long time, but you're, starting this new business, then you probably have a better idea of who your client is and what you believe in. If you've just, studied whatever it is that, the background into whatever your business is, and, you're brand new to everything, then you might still not be clear on it. So yeah, the first step is just, are you ready for this stage? Do you know who you are? Because the thing for me is, I can't, make up these answers. I can't, say, okay, your values are, you believe in having fun and you love everybody. It can't just come out of nowhere. When I'm helping clients with their brand strategy, it's really a matter of hearing what they have to say and saying, okay, so, digging deeper. Why is it that you think that? It's just like, why? And then you sort of get to the deeper reasons. So yes, it's not a matter of me making it up. I really need you to have a fairly good understanding of who you are first.
Yeah.
So if you're ready for that, so this is like a very long story once again, but if you're ready, if you feel like you're ready for that stage, then we can start to chat about it.
Yeah.
And, and it's important to make sure that whoever you work with is a good fit for you. And you can kind of tell that in a number of ways. Like recently I rebranded, and that was really exciting for me because before, this is, that sounds crazy, but I hadn't really fully developed my own brand, but I was doing this for clients all the time, and I had this really minimal kind of black and white identity. And if you know what my brand looks like now, it's just the opposite to that. And, I've found that since I have really got clear on who I was and gone through my own process, which, I should have done ages ago, but, client work gets in the way and everything. But, once I've gone on that process, I found that, and developed a, really comprehensive website, I found that people are like, oh, I get where you're coming from. I feel like I'm aligned to your values. I believe in the same things you believe in. I love your aesthetic. And people can get a pretty good idea about who I am and what I do from that. So, it's important to meet the person face to face, get an idea of their personality and their energy and how they work. But yeah, just make sure that you are working with the right person, because, you know, I've been in the industry a while and I've seen sadly, a lot of horror stories, you know, a lot of dodgy people in the industry. So just make sure you're working with the right person, I'd say.
Yeah,
and then, well, for me, I start with going through all these questions with the clients. So, and I love to do it face to face, but some people like to actually have time to think about, you know, all these questions before they speak to me. So I really like to work with whatever style suits your personality. So probably for me, like, I'd really like to have time to just think about it and write down all my answers, and then we can sort of go through it together and dig a little deeper. But, you know, last week I was working with a client on their sort of brand strategy Skype session, and she's the kind of person, she knows her business inside out. She's been in business for 10 years, and she was just, you know, she had no trouble communicating verbally, you know, on the spot who she was. So it depends on who you are, and I'm really flexible to either way. But we'll start to, you know, like, I just love to know everything about your business. So even though, you know, sometimes it's not completely relevant to the design component, I love to hear the backstory of, you know, how you got into this business, and specifically, what is your vision? What is your goal? Why are you doing this? You know, what's driving you to get out of bed in the morning and do all of this? And, you know, what are the values that really shape the way that you work? And, you know, what do you want to promise your customers? And what do you think is, like, in a couple of words, is the essence of who you are? And, you know, what kind of personality do you think you have that's authentic to you? You know, like, what kind of keywords would you use to describe that? And, you know, we look at the competition. We see, what are other people doing? You know, how could we differentiate from that? We look at your ideal customer and really dig deep to think about that. And kind of, painting this really good picture of exactly who you are. And it benefits me because I know that I have a really strong brief to work on then for the design component. And it benefits the client because then, you know, after that, I'll do a report up, and I'll just kind of like detail all the things that we spoke about and put it all together in a way where you can really see, just clearly laid out, okay, these are all the aspects to my business and to my message. So it just gives us that crystal clear clarity on the next step. And then, you know, from there, I'll think about the answers that you've said and put together a mood board. And something actually fun that I'm doing with my client at the moment is, you know, so we've done the Skype session, which was quite long. It was like two and a half hours or something. I think she was really tired by the end of it. So it's like, you know, when you're answering all these questions, I think like it can get tiring. So I'm thinking, maybe should I split it up? You know, I'm assessing, you know, is it too information overload or too much to say in one go? But anyway, so we've done the session, and then, you know, she said to me, you know, do you want me to send you my Pinterest board? And I'm like, you know, let's do the session first. Then why don't I come to you with what I think the inspiration should be based on what you've said, and then you can show me your Pinterest board, and then we'll compare, and then we'll discuss the direction, and then, you know, get clarity on what we want to do moving forward, and then go into the design phase. So like, I think it's really important to make sure you're on the same page before you jump into the design, because the last thing you'd want is, like, you know, for me, I work independently in the next phase on the, you know, creating concepts and doing the design for, you know, quite some time. And the last thing you'd want is, you know, for your designer to spend all this time working on these concepts, but then it's like, hang on a minute, like, this is nothing like I had imagined it, and this doesn't feel like the vibe I was imagining, and you know, I need to start from scratch. And, you know, let me tell you, this has happened a lot with other designers I've seen. I've taken over branding projects where somebody else started it and just didn't get it, and I'm so sure they didn't ask the right questions. And, you know, then I've had to take over and go back to square one again. So it's really important that we're on the same page. And the way that we get on the same page is by going through this strategy session, or I like to call it like your sort of like heart and soul session, or, you know, because I think that sounds a lot nicer. I think strategy sounds a bit scary and sounds really businessy, and that's so not what it's about, because it's really about tapping into who you are and what you believe in, and that's so personal, and, you know, maybe like a little bit kind of airy fairy, and, you know, like feelings, and I love all that stuff, but, you know, like, I think women appreciate it a lot more than maybe men, you know, like some men are like, what's the point of all this? But I find that women are like, yeah, like really appreciating that personal approach and the fact that I, you know, dig really deep to understand who they are before I jump into anything else.
Yeah.
And so then when I find on the other end, once we've developed the brand identity design, you know, usually there's either no revisions or there's just, you know, a couple of little tweaks and that kind of thing, because we've taken those initial steps to really understand who they are first. And so that's really exciting, you know, when we can go through that process. So from there, I'll sort of, you know, like I'll have my own independent concepting and design stage, and then I'll present it to the client like as a PDF, and I'll sort of step them through each stage of the process. So what I've seen with other designers and like the designers that I've taken over from after it hasn't worked out with them, you know, is that they'll just be like, you know, here's 10 logos, you know, one on each page, but there's no explanation of why they chose those design elements, why they chose that font, why they chose those colors and the style and how it all works together. It's just like, here's the logo, what do you like? And I think that that's definitely the wrong way of going about it, because it just makes it confusing and it makes it so hard to make a decision, because you're kind of like looking at all these things and, you know, you're not the design expert, so you don't know the best way to judge it. So you're probably not thinking about what would my customer like, and you're just kind of thinking, oh, you know, I think I like that one better. And it just makes it super confusing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I probably go, you know, too far other end almost, like, because I love detail. So I put together this really comprehensive presentation and I sort of go through each element. So what I worked through with the brand identity system, it's really important to create a system, not just a logo, which is another huge part of it. Like, because you want to create that consistency of message. But a logo doesn't exist in isolation. Like, you know, sometimes a logo will just be, you know, there, you know, as your social media display, you know, profile picture or whatever. But most of the time your logo is with other elements. So it's with colors, it's with fonts. So, you know, you've obviously got text somehow involved in it. You know, it's with photos, it's maybe with other graphic elements. So there's all these different aspects to whatever design item it is, like say your website, say, you know, social media posts or your business card. There's all these elements at play, and it's not just your logo. So when you just develop a logo and then kind of wing it from there, then you lose consistency in your message, because your logo might be fantastic and it might express exactly who you are completely. But if every other element is just like whatever you dreamt up on the day, and like, you know, 1 minute you're using one color, 1 minute you're using another color, you're using totally skewed font styles and, you know, different photography styles and that kind of thing, then you're getting that consistency of message. So that's why I believe in creating not just a logo, but a full system. So that covers logo, color palette, typography, which is another word for like your fonts and how they're used, your graphic elements. So that could be like patterns, icons, textures in different, you know, beautiful little elements that you can include, and photography style.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
those are the elements that I work on, and that I develop a set style for the client. So then I'll lay them all out. I'll be like, okay, we're starting with the logo. Here was my inspiration, and this is how I came up with this logo design, and this is why I think it works for your audience and conveys your message. So I'll really step them through that, and it all ties back to that document that we created, you know, back say a month or so ago, where we got to the heart and soul of who they were and understood their message. So it's all like, you know, I did this because it relates back to something that you hear, you know, so kind of the client just gets it. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I can understand why you did what you did. So I'll go through each element like that. And then at the end of the document, I'll kind of put all the elements into use in, you know, some applications, because it's all good and well to have the system and to see, okay, that's my logo, that's my colors. But it's like, the important thing is how do they mesh together to create this look? So it's like what I was talking about before with the cake, you know, you've got flour, you've got cocoa, but how does it look when when the cake comes out of the oven. You know, it's kind of the same thing. You need to think about, like, how do they all work together, and do they create a consistent message? So
Yeah.
I'll step them through, you know, some designs just so they can get some context, because you know, it's no good when someone just gives you a logo design, pops it on a white piece of paper, because that gives you no context. You want to see, how does it look on a business card? How does it look, you know, on your website? That kind of thing. So
I think, sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's really important, not to just, you know, you can go anywhere and just get a logo, but there's a definitely, and as you've explained to us, there's so much more involved than just having a logo. And it does across the board. It looks a lot better when it's a lot more uniformed and so much more about you and your client, rather than just a colour or a, you know, image that you've seen. So
exactly, yeah, definitely.
So
one more element to the process, because, like, yeah, it is really long. There's so much to talk about. So the final stage after that, once they've approved it, is to create brand guidelines. So what brand guidelines are, it's like or you might call it like a style guide, like there's different words for it, but it's like a PDF digital document that, you know, lays out the do's and don'ts of working with your brand. So it'll be all the different elements, and, you know, don't skew your logo, change the colors, you know, like put it on a really complicated photo background. Like, you know, these are your colors, these are the values in RGB, which is for screen, CMYK, which is for print, like all these different values. So I'll step them through every stage and just kind of give them a how-to guide to how to use it, because that's so important as well. Because you don't just want the system, but then it's like, how do I use it? And, you know, how do I use it in a consistent way? So that's the final step of the stage.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I think that's good. It is good because it steps you through. It's not just a simple, like, here's your logo, off you go kind of thing. So
yeah, like, I don't think that helps you create a sustainable, successful business in the long run.
No.
And, you know, maybe you're brand new to starting out and you really don't have the budget. So I can kind of understand, like, if you really need to, you know, all you can afford is a logo at this stage, and that's fair enough. But I'd really recommend that once you're ready to take it to the next level, you develop a full system and really think really deeply about who you are and how to translate that. So it might not always be realistic, you know, to invest a lot of money in your brand from the very beginning, but don't just, like, put it in the back burner forever and forget about it, because it is so, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Emma. That's been so great. There's so much great information in that.
Yeah, I hope I didn't overwhelm everyone with the info. I really hope it was helpful. And yeah, so my one message would be, even if you can't invest in in this full brand identity package, you know, even if you're doing this independently, really think about your message in your heart and soul. And that's something that you could do on your own, you know, if you're on a tight budget. But yeah, don't skip that step, because it's the absolute foundation to building your business. So start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for that, Emma.
It's so great to chat with you again.
Yeah. So excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us again as well. And so I will put Emma's details and so her bio, and also just some links for you to check her amazing website and her workout. So I'll add that in to the information as well, so you can find out more. And yes, I'll be joining you again really soon with our next guest. So thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.